Well, hello friends, and welcome to another Ask ZAC. I hope you are doing well today. Today we're going to, kind of tell the rest of the story on two episodes where we've had more information come in. We're going to talk about the rest of the story on the Mostortion, and we're going to do a little more picking fingers. So kind of a good follow-up. First, a little short pause for the cause. If you've been enjoying the show, I hope you will go down and subscribe. And if you'd like to support the show, I hope you'll go to askzac.com and go to the store, and you can pick up one of these nice mugs right here or a nice t-shirt, and I really appreciate it. Also at askzac.com, I'm releasing kind of interviews and things that I've done in the past for print. And the latest on there is a interview that I did for print with Reggie Young concerning his album Forever Young. And that was the kind of one and only solo record that he did. And he released that just a couple of years before he passed away. And so that was a very special interview. And I hope you will, again, go to askzac.com and check that out. All right. So I kind of opened the show doing some finger style stuff on my Danocaster. It was just had a touch of compression on it straight into the amp, playing on the back pickup. I had played it with both pickups and with echo on, and it got a little out of control. But anyway, I wanted everything to be clear, especially after last week's clean and clear episode. So I wanted to show some more kind of finger style, pick and fingers, I should say, licks. And so I played a couple of them in this. And here is the first one. And I love this one because the first time I heard it, it was used for the key of G. And my guitar teacher, or I should call him my guitar dad, Pat Grogan, back in Corpus Christi, Texas, showed me the lick and played it, over a G. Then I saw John Jorgensen play the same lick, but used it in E minor. And it was like, of course, I didn't understand relative minor and such. But here's the lick. And I played it in the little opening piece. It's this. I'm going to play it real slow, starting on the B note on the high E string. And then you're kind of playing alternating open strings and fretted notes. So there's a nice bounce to it. So that's the way I was originally shown it. Well, then I saw John Jorgensen use it like this. It's like, whoa, that's cool. He might even played it, over a E add 9 or 2 or whatever you want to call that. But anyway, so yes, you can use that same lick over E minor. Or over E7. So those are that's a really fun pick and fingers lick. Here's another one that'll get you, that'll help you out on your roll pattern. And so this is a pick, finger, finger. And here I'm gonna play the lick, and then I'm gonna show the right hand, and then I'm gonna do the two together. So here's the lick. Fun. So here's just the right hand. That seems pretty easy. And again, that's just starting with your pick on the A string, and then doing the fingers are doing the D and G, and then you go down to the D string, and then you're doing the G and B, and then you're going down to the G string and doing the B and E. So you get the. Okay. But what you do is you have, when you add the left hand in, you have these hammer-ons. So those are, that's a really fun pick and fingers lick. Here's another one that'll get you, that'll help you out on your roll pattern. And so this is a pick, finger, finger. And again, that's just starting with your pick on the A string, and then you're doing the pick on the D string, and then you're doing the G and B, and then you're going down to the G string, and then you're doing the B and E. So you get the. one more. This one's a little more banjo-y, but again, using good picking fingers. Here's the lick. So we've got our first finger, barring the the G and B notes on your high E and B string, and your pinky is playing this C sharp note. So that's number one. Then this, and that's your first finger playing this this B flat note, and then of course playing those open B and E strings, and then you do the same thing but move it up. No, you don't. Don't do that, because you go to the 4th fret on the D string, and then 4th fret on the A string, and then so. Okay. All right. So those are some cool pick and finger licks to work on, and so that's kind of a continuation of the pick and finger episode that I did, and hope you will continue to work on that. Now, I did an episode on the Mostortion pedal, which is one of my favorite overdrive pedals and is quite popular here in the Nashville area. And I tried to find the designer of the pedal, and I could not track him down. And of course, after I did the episode, which was released in early March, he found me on Facebook, and we ended up having a nice phone conversation and was able to kind of get the rest of the story on the Mostortion. So here she is. Of course, I've got another one in my pedal board underfoot. I've got a couple of these. Yes, it's a sickness. So with the Mostortion, I asked him, first, how he started working for Ibanez, and he started working part-time as a repairman and just kind of doing odd jobs in the early 1980s. Then, went full-time and was working in pedals and pickups for electric guitars. Then one of the real trends in the 80s was trying to have, because transistor amps were really dominating in the 80s, and everyone was trying to make a transistorized amp that sounded like a tube. And so Marshall and others were using MOSFETs, and they were calling them things like MOS valve and all sorts of different things. And so John Lomas, who is the name of the designer at Ibanez, who designed the Mostortion, he was really interested in this MOSFET chip. So he got one, and the first thing he did was he took a tube screamer and jammed it in there. And he said immediately he liked the sound better. He said it had more headroom, and it was more sensitive to pick attack. And I would have to agree that the Mostortion it does have more headroom and better pick attack, and it's more responsive to me than a tube screamer. And that, from there, he then decided the other thing he didn't like about the tube screamer was the EQ on it, which of course was a single knob and basically a treble control. So with that, he started looking around, and the amp that they had in the test room at Ibanez was a little PV transistorized amp. Well, looking at it, of course, it had bass, treble, and mid. And, it was, Hartley had actually taken the design from Leo Fender, which Leo Fender could have gotten that from a tube amp or a tube, book or something. But anyway, he took the passive, tone controls off that PV amp, which came from like Blackface Fenders, and put it in the Mostortion. So in essence, this is a tube screamer that has the chip as a MOSFET instead of the 4558, and then and then has the EQ from basically a Fender Blackface amp. And I asked him, why did you come up with it? He said, well, I was just trying to keep a job. And he said, and the MOSFETs were interesting, and I was just trying to make a good sounding pedal. And he says, a good sounding overdrive pedal. So even though this is called a distortion, it was never designed to be a distortion. That's just the higher ups at Ibanez named it that. He said he wanted to call it the Mos Drive, which I really like that name. I wish it would have been called the Mos Drive. I think it probably would have sold better. But instead it got the name Mostortion, and has MOSFET distortion on there. And I think they lost a lot of customers. I think if they would have called it the Mos Drive and as an overdrive, I think it would have sold a lot better. And if they would have put an emphasis on the powerful EQ, that it has. So it was a really interesting conversation, and I'm very appreciative to John Lomas for reaching out to me and kind of telling me how this thing came about. And he said that it sold terribly. He said that they couldn't give these guys away. And he was, I think he was kind of worried for his job, but John Lomas really redeemed himself by being the guy at Ibanez that pushed for the Tube Screamer to be reissued, specifically the TS9. So Ibanez was not interested at all in doing a TS9 reissue, and he kept pushing for it, and finally they agreed to it, and they sold thousands of them off the bat, thousands of them. And it was all because, everyone was, going Stevie Ray Vaughan crazy. And there was, the only Tube Screamer out there at the time was the little Sound Tank and the little TS10. And, I even think the TS10 was kind of on its way out. So anyway, yeah. So John Lomas more than redeemed himself by getting them to reissue the original TS9, of course, with the original manual and box and everything. So, and those are great pedals, and those were made by Maxon. And of course, later on, Ibanez and Maxon kind of parted ways, and that's why you have Ibanez pedals and Maxon pedals. And just not to go down the rabbit hole, but Ibanez is a name. They don't own a factory, and so they would have different factories make things for them. And it's just that Maxon used to be the factory that made stuff for Ibanez, and then they parted ways. And so then Maxon started making a lot of those same designs that some of them they had come up with themselves, and started putting them out there. So there you have it. So thanks to John Lomas for reaching out to me. And it's nice to kind of know the rest of the story with the Mostortion, which is a fun pedal. Know that it was a Tube Screamer with black face tone controls and a MOSFET chip. All right, well guys, I hope you're having a good week. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and hope you keep working on your picking fingers, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, and bye-bye.